Okay, we're going to look at two key moves in the golf swing, one being rotation and the other being how you fold your right arm and cock your wrist on the backswing. For the rotation, we need to get your posture in the right position, and then being able to fold your right arm and cock your wrist, we need to make sure that you're holding the club properly. So if we get those 2 points right, it's going to have a big knock-on effect to your swing. You know, it's going to make it a lot easier. So the first thing you will actually look at is your rotation. So we need to work on your posture first of all. So when we set up to the ball, it's important that we push the hips back and then keep them back as we flex the knees. So it's almost like a little squatting action, because that will help you maintain your posture, keeping your spine angle fairly straight, keeping your chin up, and then you're in a nice balanced position. Plus you're in a nice position where you can rotate nice and freely. So a good little trick to do is get the club underneath your chin and then just hold it across your chest like this. This is going to stop your head dropping as you bend forwards. So if I bend forwards and push my hips back, and then just as I feel my hamstring stretch, just flex my knees a little bit and then lower my arms, let my arms hang nice and freely. That's pretty much where I want to be in my posture. As you can see, my hips are pushed right back, just behind my heels. A lot of you don't do that, you tend to sit in, more like this, or you tend to slouch the shoulders. So another good way of doing it is hold the club out waist high, parallel with the ground, shaft parallel with the ground, and as you bend forwards, make sure you push your hips right back, and then just that little bit of flex. It's really important to have your hips back, because when you swing a golf club, there's a massive force going in that direction towards the golf ball. So, you know, if your hips are forward here, along with that force, it's actually going to pull you in towards the ball. So a lot of you tend to thrust your hips forward as you're coming into the golf ball. Generally that's down to poor posture. So if we're keeping the hips back, we're able then to counterbalance that force going in the direction of the golf ball. So it almost feels like we're sitting back as we're coming into the golf ball. Right, once you've got your posture, you can then work on your rotation. Now I like to see a nice centered rotation. I don't like to see anybody swaying off the ball and trying to get back to it. So if you put a club on the ground into the middle of your feet, take your stance shoulder width apart, get into your posture, and then bend forwards. What you're actually trying to do when we swing back, when we rotate, is pull the right hip and right shoulder back and up. So you can see how the grip now sort of points slightly down to the ground. My right hip has moved back and up, so has my right shoulder. What we can see as well when I do that is when I get into my fully wound up position, this shaft on top of my shoulders is directly on top of that shaft on the golf floor, on the floor. So that shows that I've made a nice centered turn. If anything, my weight is sort of loaded into my left side, ready to turn back the other way. And it's just a really easy way of staying centered over the ball and improving your strike. So we pull the right shoulder back and up along with the hip. That's it, this grip is pointing now slightly downward, and then we're ready just to turn the other way. So there's no need to shift your weight over to your right side, because a lot of you exaggerate that. So then you're having to try and slide back the other way to correct it. Just stay nice and centered, turn back, and then back through. So you can see this right hip here. If there was a club coming out of the ground, as I rotated, my hip would actually move away from that and towards the target. So from this position now, I feel like my weight is ready on my left side now. I can then just rotate back the other way. So we're basically rotating, going back, rotating as you're going through. So there's no lateral movement there. Just to show you from a different angle. So if I was setting up to play this ball here, right hip, right shoulder going back. Look how that grip points down. It doesn't point down at the ball, that's too much. It's going to point maybe about a foot out in front of it. So turn in and then back through the other way. So right hip, right shoulder back and up. And then as you turn the other way, it's just the reverse of that. So left shoulder, left hip, moving back, up on the way through, and then up into the finish. So posture is going to help with your rotation. And then the next thing is going to be folding your right arm and cocking your wrist. which are both going to pretty much work together. I mentioned before in a previous video that that's all we're trying to do. We're not trying to cock the wrist first. If we were to hold the club down on the ground like this and then lift it up, you'd fold the right arm first, and then the weight of the golf club would cock your wrist. So if you try that, you'll feel exactly what I'm doing here and what I'm talking about. So really, when we swing a golf club into the backswing, when we get to halfway, we're not cocking the wrist, but we're folding the right arm, and then the wrist is cocking at the end there like that. And it is just literally the weight of the golf club as it tips over, cocks your wrist. Like if we were going to throw it, you know, you're just sort of folding that arm back, wrist is cocking, weight of the club, pulling your wrist back, release it through. So that's only really possible if you've got a nice neutral grip. So when I talk about neutral grip, what we're trying to do when we put it into the left hand is just hold it into the fingers, don't hold it in the palm. So drop it down into the fingers, close your hand on top. So I feel like I've got my fingers firmly wrapped around it. Keep the thumb tucked in, and then make sure you're gripping it right at the top of the grip there. And then all we do with the right hand is the same, pretty much into the joints of the fingers, wrap it over. So my thumb is sitting underneath the thumb of my right hand now. So everything's nice and connected. I feel like I've got it in the fingers. A good way of trying to sort of imagine how you hold it in both hands. Imagine the parallel bars in the Olympics. Now if you were going to push yourself up on those bars, you would find that your palm would have to be a little bit more on the top of the bar to help you push yourself up. So a lot of golfers that I teach don't really have the palm in that position. You tend to have it a little bit more, what I call it, a weaker position or a slicer's position. It's more on the side of the grip. So you imagine being on the parallel bars like this, trying to pull yourself up, you're gonna fall off. You got no grip. So think of it like that. We're trying to get this palm a little bit more onto the top of the grip. So the pad of the left hand here is sitting on top of that grip. So if I'm pushing down on the bar, I can then push myself up. And then the same would work in the right hand again, just trying to feel the same in the right hand there. So it's really important to get the grip in a fairly neutral position because it'll allow your wrist to hinge and unhinge properly and freely. So let's go with the old fishing rod. So imagine if I'm just fishing, I'm holding my rod here. So if I was holding the rod ready to cast towards the camera, I wouldn't hold it underneath here. I wouldn't hold it too much over the top here. You know, I'd be in a position where I feel that my wrist can sort of hinge freely and then just sort of cast it out there. So that's my right hand grip. Same would work if you're left-handed casting. So again, not holding it round here, not here, in a fairly neutral position so we can cast. And then you can see right arm folding, wrist cocking, casting. Okay, exactly the same this way. Left arm folding if you're left-handed, wrist cocking, through. So the grip is going to help with the folding of the arm and cocking of the wrist on the way back. The posture is really going to help with the rotation. And it's really important, this rotation, to stay dead centered. If you want to hit a ball that isn't moving, it's just staying still on the ground there. The more you can just stay where you are and rotate back and then rotate through, the more chance you got of striking it. If you're moving off a little bit, just means you got to compensate to get back. Makes it a bit harder. And as for the grip, like I say, if you're not holding it properly, maybe you're too strong, maybe you're too weak, it affects how your arm and wrist fold in the backswing, so you're going to make the whole game a lot more difficult for yourself. So if you get those points right and keep working on them, you know, using the mirror to check your posture. The reason why I put this underneath my chin is to keep my chin up as I bend forwards. I see a lot of you, again, probably told to keep your head down. You got your chin in your chest, and then that just prevents you from turning. So keep that up naturally, bend forwards like a little squat, let the arms hang, and then when you turn, once you've done a load of drills, when you turn, feel that right hip, right shoulder pulling back and up. So then the left hip, left shoulder actually works more down towards the golf ball. A lot of you will tend to when you swing back, you turn your hips and your shoulders very level with the floor, and look where I am now. So it gives the appearance of the swing being very flat, so you're going to come down and miss it, or come over the top. So it's really important that we turn everything at a slight angle, because we're hitting the ball down on the floor. And then obviously using the GForce Swing Trainer is going to help as well, because when you rotate properly, you create two forces in the swing, centrifugal force, which is the force acting away from the center of rotation, and then centripetal force, which is the force working towards the center of rotation. So those are the two forces we need to balance out in the golf swing. That's why it's important to have your posture and your hips back and everything, so you can balance these forces out when you're swinging. And if you use those forces to your advantage, you'll create a tremendous amount of club head speed with minimum effort. And it's one of the reasons how this flexible shaft works, because when you're rotating properly and using those two forces as you're swinging, you're creating a lot of tension in the shaft. The shaft's being pulled completely straight. There's a lot of tension in it. So if you're not using those forces, the shaft's going to be very flexible. So this gives you great feedback as to whether you're actually using those forces correctly. So hips back, setting up, I'm getting halfway back, feel my right arm folding, not even thinking about my wrist cocking, because that just happens at the top. So that's a good thing to feel when you're swinging back. If you go back nice and smooth, you'll feel there's a point where, as the head of the golf club tips over, your wrists are just going to go naturally. So that's an important thing to feel. So really hips right back there. Feels like I'm squatting a bit. And then just turn, right hip, right shoulder, back and up. And then through. Yeah, it seems like a lot to think about in the beginning, but I'm just trying to trim it down to a few points there. A few basic points, fundamentals. Get the grip, get good posture, learn to rotate properly, learn to fold the right arm and cut your wrist. Those are the key moves in the golf swing. Those are the things you've got to work on to get consistent. So all it is, it's two parts to your setup. Number one, the grip. Number two, your posture. And then once you've got those, which are really easy to work on, it's then working on your rotation, and then you're folding the right arm. Those are your key points. So give that plenty of practice. Pick up a swing trainer as well. It's going to make a big difference. And look out for a few more tips in the future. Thanks for watching.